Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Jane Anger, and I'm one of the bookselling team at 5E's Bookshop in Nottingham. In the days when we had lots of events in the shop, we had an evening to celebrate the publication of Jane Traies' book, Now You See Me, Lesbian Life Stories. And this was specifically about the lives of older lesbians. It was a packed event, and the book has been reprinted several times. There it is. Jane has spent many years researching the lives of those of us in the LGBTQ+ communities. And she has said about life stories, it is important not to let LGBTQ history become homogenized, as if the story was the same for all of us. It wasn't. And this is why individual life stories remain an important tool in the proper understanding of our shared past. Okay, and so I would say they're a powerful tool for now and for justice in the present. And also it is true that the experience of those seeking asylum and refuge also get homogenized, and they shouldn't be. So it is with great pleasure that we welcome Jane back tonight to celebrate and hear about her new book, Free to Be Me, Refugee Stories from the Lesbian Immigration Support Group. We're delighted to be joined by Maria from that group and by Charity from Kairos, a similar support group in Nottingham. I'm going to hand over to Jane in a moment, and she will introduce the other two speakers. But first, some housekeeping. Simon, my colleague, will be putting details of the book and how to buy it on our web shop in the chat box, so keep an eye on that. But please put your questions in the Q&A, and that's where I'll pick them up from, and we'll deal with those and ask the various speakers those questions at the end for about 15 minutes. So welcome, Jane Traies.
Thank you very much, Jane. It's really, what I'd like to say is it's lovely to be back. And it would be really nice if we were in the shop in Nottingham, and maybe we will be again one day. But this is as good as it gets, and it's very good because it looks as if we've managed to draw a very large audience from lots of places. So thanks for that introduction. And before I go on, can I just say one of the wonderful things about this event tonight is that there are people in our audience. We can't see them, unfortunately, but I know they're there. There are lots of supporters from LISG Manchester. Hi to those of you that are there, but also wonderfully from Kairos in Nottingham. I think it's true that LISG and Kairos had lost touch with each other over the years and weren't entirely sure whether the other one still existed. And it's been through this event that the people at the bookshop have organised that we've managed to come back together again, which is just so lovely. And it would have been worth that if we hadn't done anything else at all tonight. Also in our audience, I know, are friends from a refugee activist group called a campaign called These Walls Must Fall. And they might introduce themselves in the chat at some point and tell us what they're doing, because it's closely connected with some of the stories that we'll hear. And it's about the way in which the Home Office currently treats people who are seeking asylum in this country. So I'm going to start off by telling you how this all began. The ending is the book, which we're going to talk about, and hopefully some of you are going to buy because it's for a good cause. But it all began, 4 years ago now, when I was sitting at this same desk that I'm sitting at now, at this computer, and I had an email out of the blue from a woman who said, I know your work about old lesbians. You don't know me, but I know your work. Now, ever since I published the Old Lesbian book, I was getting lots and lots of wonderful contacts from all sorts of people all over this country and beyond, wanting to talk about LGBT aging and old lesbians in particular. So I wasn't very surprised when I got this email. But as I read on, I realised that actually it was something quite different and something that had never happened to me before, because Sorrel, and I hope you're in the audience tonight, Sorrel, I can't see you, but love and respect if you're there, had written to me saying, as people do, you don't know me, but I know your work. She said, I work for a group in Manchester which supports lesbian and bi women seeking asylum. And we have a member here who has applied for asylum in the UK. She has been refused because the Home Office don't believe that she's lesbian. They don't believe any of the things she's saying. And they don't believe this for various reasons, but we don't know how to help her further with her fresh claim, because she's very unusual among our group of refugees. And here we get back to what Jane said about stereotypes. I mean, most people's stereotype of a person seeking asylum is not even a woman, but certainly it's not an old woman. And the person she was writing to me about was a woman over 70, a lesbian from Uganda, who had had her claim refused, and the Home Office had said, we don't believe that you're a lesbian, because I think the Home Office certainly didn't have a stereotype in their heads that a lesbian might look like an African grandmother and great-grandmother of 73 or whatever she was then. And she said, Sorrel said, do you have anything in your research about old lesbians that we could use to help this person to write her fresh claim to the Home Office? And of course I did. Of course I did. Because as we all know, lesbians have often been heterosexually married in the past. They've often got children. They've often got grandchildren. And yes, of course, you can go on being a lesbian after you're 70. And I sat here, and what I have to say at this point is that it turned out that this lovely Ugandan woman, whom we currently calling Grace, that Grace and I are exactly the same age. We were both born in 1945. And I sat here and I thought about the differences in our life. And I also thought, I've done all this research, I've had such fun with it, it's been great, I've done it for my own satisfaction as much as anything else. And now somebody is saying to me, you could take that research and you could use it to help somebody else. And the person you could help is a woman of your own age. So it was a sort of life-changing moment for me and affected me very deeply. And I did write, obviously, I wrote for Grace. I went to meet her. We got to know each other. It wasn't easy at first. Her first language is Luganda. Mine is English. Her English was a very African English, but we got through in the end. And when we couldn't understand each other, we just held hands. And we're friends now. What I'd like to say that it was all plain sailing after that, but it wasn't. It took another 2 years after I wrote that letter before we all sat in the tribunal office in Manchester at her very last appeal, waiting to see whether she would eventually get her status or whether she would be put on a plane. And I have to say it was one of the most frightening moments of my life. She did get her stay, and her story is the first story in the book, told in her own words. Over those 2, 3, 4 years, I got to know lots of other members of LISG and lots of the volunteers as well. And the day that we went to Grace's tribunal, we all came out of court a bit shattered, very happy, but very, very exhausted. And we all went off round the corner to the tea shop where LISG members always go. And we sat having our tea and rejoicing and hugging each other and telling tales. And that was the moment, I think, at which I realised that we had to, the rest of the world needs to know about this. The rest of the world needs to know not just the awful things that happen to people who seek asylum, but the wonderful things that are being done by these sisters in Manchester, and as I now know, in Nottingham. So that was how the book began. But before I tell you about how we made the book, I think it's much more important to listen to the voices of people who actually know, because we've got 2 speakers here tonight, one from Manchester and one from Nottingham, who have themselves been members of those 2 groups, who have, well, Maria, who's going to speak to us first, is still in her asylum process. I think it's been something like 3 years, and she still hasn't got there, but she's very kindly said that she would talk to us about it tonight. Maria, can you unmute yourself? There we go. And what would you like to tell us this evening?
It's a pleasure to be in here with you all, guys, and I feel very proud of you as a part of this. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria, and I'm an activist, an active member. I'm also doing campaigns. Today, I'm going to tell you about myself. Basically, I'm from Pakistan, and there is no place for lesbians in Pakistan. because if anybody got to know that you're a lesbian, you are liable to kill. Even if your family got to know that you're a lesbian, they will definitely kill you. So when I came in this country, I was thinking I find some justice and something like that. But I've been through so many things. Actually, I can say when I applied asylum, it's been here like nearly 4 years I'm here. In October, it's been 4 years I'm here. I've been refused many times. First, I put in asylum, then they refused me. They don't trust on me. Home Office doesn't trust on me that I'm a lesbian. They asked me to give some proofs or many things, which is not possible for me to show myself. And I don't even know what to do and how to prove myself. So first they refused me from the Liverpool. Then I applied again. And then I went in the court. Even Home Office doesn't even believe on my single thing. They were like, you're not lesbian. They were like, my kidney was forcibly taken in Pakistan. And they don't believe on that thing as well. I'm having some health issues, many issues after removal kidney, But like as asylum seeker, I can say I've been refused and wanted too much. I have to collect so many evidences, which mean anytime I can be deported. And I don't know what to do. And there are upcoming new policies which make me more stressed. And Home Office doesn't even understand our mental condition. We've been through so many things at the past, and now we are still in that position where there is no one. There is no one to help us. I can say, but Home Office only depends. They only denied you. Why they don't trust on you? They think we are not lesbians. Why they don't think we are? Why they are doing such things? I don't understand. It's very hard to prove ourselves, but I am ready to prove myself in any case because I am open lesbian. In my country, I can't live like a lesbian, but in this country, I would love to say I'm open lesbian. And when I joined LISG, I can say in pandemic, it's my very unluckiness. When I joined LISG, I met only once. But after that, there is a lockdown and so many things. We are in pandemic, we can't meet each other. But luckily, they arranged a Zoom meeting. So I can have a time to see people, to talk about them, to share my problems with them. Even I'm not the one who's sharing my problem. There are so many women. I can tell you there are so many women. They share their problem, and the less hold their people like mother hold their children. I can say the mother feeds their children when, mother only knows when their children is hungry, what time they need milk. Let's know their children. Let's know their family. Let's know their girls, what she needs and what they want. Let's help us in every single thing. I am thankful to LISG. I'm thankful to God that I am a part of LISG. I am so happy to be here. And no matter Home Office accept me or not, but I am a lesbian. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking to us so openly and so heartfeltly about your experience. I think one of the things that perhaps people don't know is what a very, very long time some people wait. And sometimes it's years, as it has been for you. So we wish you a lot of good luck with your second claim, and we're all rooting for you. And that's another thing that we haven't actually prepared for when we said we would make the book, is that, as you've pointed out, your whole experience of being in the LISG group has been during the lockdown, and you've really only been to meetings online. But there's been a lot of virtual hugs, and I can see from what you said that it's been really important to you to belong to that group, even at this, well, perhaps especially at this difficult time. Now, I know a little bit about the LISG Manchester group, but I don't know anything at all about Kairos. So it's a real delight to have Charity here. Hello, Charity. Nice to meet you. And would you like to take over now and tell us a bit about what you want to say?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charity Matia. I'm representing Kairos Lesbian Support Group in Nottingham. Kairos was founded in 2015, but I came to know them in 2018. They are a lesbian and bi women support group supporting women seeking asylum. Mostly Kairos work with you throughout the asylum journey, which is a very complicated journey. And in my case, I came across them at Nottingham Pride in summer of 2018. So they spoke about their group and I was so interested, but unfortunately my friends and I were from Birmingham and they were kind enough to sponsor us and fund our travel expenses to come to Nottingham and attend their group. So why I'm saying this is how they didn't allow the boundaries to stop them to support us. They could see the need in us because by then we never had such in Birmingham. So they became friends because when you are in the asylum process, it's quite a very lonely space to be. It takes a lot of courage to mix with people who are not in the same situation as you, and let alone to trust any other individuals with your issues or your story, because it's very invasive, it's very private, and it's emotionally draining. But the Kairos women we met have taught me a lot as in supporting people with asylum, especially when you tell them situations whereby they don't even sound real here, but they are very real in other parts of the world. And apart from them, the other people you've shared these experiences with are Home Office. And Home Office never give you that chance or show any remorse. They don't believe you, they don't show any remorse, and that take you into a certain emotional space that makes you feel isolated, depressive. So they support women who are very, very vulnerable when they need that support the most. They don't stop there. They take you through the journey, whether you get granted refugee status or not, because even after refugee status, it takes a lot for one to become normal again, because the process itself is very diminishing. People lose their self-esteem, people lose their sense of direction. So these women, they walk with you until you become yourself. And 9 out of 10, then people, when they get granted, they choose to volunteer because now they feel the need of volunteers out there. So founded in 2015, they were inspired by 2 women from Uganda who were seeking asylum and needed support. And the support they gave these women, through these women, they realized there's a lot needed out there in that sector, because there are a lot of groups that support other LGBT groups. But when it comes to bi and lesbian women, they are kind of, it's quite a small unit that is there to support. So Kairos plays a big role in that way. And for me, I remember being homeless at some point. I've been, what's the word? I've been almost like with literally nothing, and these women took over almost everything. They become friends, they become supporters, they help getting solicitors, they help getting statements together. And most importantly, they help you to have space to speak out, to share, to gain confidence, and to just to make you feel relevant, which is very important when you're going through the asylum process. And thankfully in 2019, with their immense support, I was granted my refugee status, of which I owe it to them. Yeah, yes, and it's something that I tell everyone. I refer to them, I refer everyone to them. Unfortunately, they are only in Nottingham and they can only be able to support the few members that are around them geographically, yeah. But there are women who are very, very available in other ways, because I've made not only friends or support group, but they have become family. And it's not only me, to most people, they become family, because you come here, you don't know anyone, then come these women who give you that hug. And I know it's even worse now with the pandemic. Things have changed a lot. It's difficult for one to go out and be yourself in a way. Of course, things are coming back to normal, but when you are in asylum, everything is slow. Everything is slow. So they play a very big role in supporting women seeking asylum.
Thank you so much, Charity. And I was very struck by something you said there, when you said that the group had become family.
Family.
Because LISG Manchester have, I expect you do too, a WhatsApp group. And whenever I wake up in the morning and look at the WhatsApp group, the first somebody has come on and say, "Good morning, family. Good morning, my family.
Yes.
Good morning, my lovely LISG family." And I think particularly if you've left family behind, you know, and you're feeling very isolated in this country, that is exactly. I think Maria has often said to me, unmute yourself, Maria, because I think I know what you're going to say about LISG. Unmute yourself.
Sorry?
I know when I'm talking about family, and I've heard you say many, many times, LISG holds their girls.
Yeah, truly. LISG is an example of mother.
Here's a mother. She said to me one day, LISG holds their girls like a mother holds her baby. That's about it.
Because only mothers
Yes.
knows when their child is hungry, what they want. So LISG, without telling us, LISG know what we want.
There you go. All right. So thank you both so much. And hold on, because I'm sure when we have questions at the end, some of the questions will be for you. Thank you both so much for sharing. I'm just going to bring it together now by telling a little bit about how we made our book, because saying we'll make a book is one thing and doing it is another. So I went along to the LISG monthly meeting. They have a meeting in normal times on a Sunday, first Saturday of the month at the Women's Centre. And I went along and explained to them my idea. I showed them the book of life stories of old lesbians. And I said, you know, we could do something similar, and it would have two functions. It would tell people about the work that LISG is doing, and it would tell people about what people seeking asylum go through, because I didn't know, and I'm sure the majority of people in this country have no idea what the Home Office is doing to the most vulnerable people in our society. But also, if we make a book and sell it, we might raise some funds for the work of LISG. So the whole thing took off, and everybody said, yes, we will do this. This is a very good idea. And some people volunteered. So we set up I have to say at this point, I don't live anywhere near Manchester. I live on the south coast near Brighton. So we set up some journeys for me to go to Manchester, stay for a few days, do some interviews, because this is how this work happens. People tell their stories into the microphone, and then I go away and help them to make it into a reading story, a story that is written, not spoken, but that still sounds like a person talking. And that's the thing we do. So it takes quite a long time sometimes. But of course, what I didn't know when I went up to do my first interviews at the end of February and my second lot of interviews in the first week of March last year was that the third lot of interviews in the third week of March were never going to happen, because as we all know, COVID came. So we had to go with what we got, and with WhatsApp and with Zoom, and hope for the best. And we had, at that point, 13 women's stories, and we worked with those. And it was very difficult because mostly we were just working on telephones, on mobile phones, and it was difficult to send documents to and fro, and people have to send back their changes, and then I have to work again and send it back to them, and the whole thing went on and on and on. But because we didn't have anything else to do in lockdown, we made a book in a year. We started in that February, March time, getting the interviews and the stories together. And I'd just like to pay tribute to all the women whose stories are in the book, because as Charity has just said, you mostly have to tell your life story to the Home Office, and they ask very nasty questions and they don't believe you, and it's a traumatic experience to tell that story. And I was very aware that sitting down with women who'd have to do that, it was hard because I didn't want to make them upset and make them go through that experience again. But we had to have, we have a trusting relationship, I hope. And the thing I remember is that even when it was very hard and we did cry and we did have to stop and we did have to make a cup of coffee and then start again. But what I remember most is that all the women said, no, I don't want to stop. I will go on. I will tell this story because I want other people to know it. And that got us through some of the really most difficult times. So in the end, we had 12 stories from 13 women. And I say that because just as in the old Lesbians book, two of the women were a couple. I could not tease their story apart. They were a double act. So they're in the book all in one story together. And we got it out on International Women's Day this year. So it was exactly a year. And everybody said you can't write a book in a year, but you know what? LISG can. So I'll just mention again that we are selling it and hoping that the profit from the book, once we've covered our costs, will all go to the work of LISG Manchester. But we also hope, so buy it if you haven't got one. But the other thing we hope is that it will inspire other groups to do the same work, because as Charity said, she travelled all the way from Birmingham to Nottingham to be part of this women's support group. As far as we know, there are only there are lots and lots of LGBT asylum support groups in the country, lots of brilliant volunteers helping our brothers and sisters who are claiming asylum on the grounds of their sexual orientation. But as far as we know, there are only 3 who specialise in helping women: LISG Manchester, Kairos in Nottingham, and a group called Rainbow Sisters in North London. And there ought to be so many more, because women's stories are, in a minority in the whole asylum process, and they really are the most vulnerable people. I've talked enough, I think. I'm going to stop. Jane, do you want to take over again and think about questions and answers?
Yep. Okay. So, folks, put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll direct them to whichever speaker you want them directed to. I just wanted to start with one, Jane. It takes a lot of courage to tell your stories, you've said, and it's often traumatic, and all of you have referred to that. And it also takes courage to step forward and give support. And I know you've told some of the stories of the people who started the organisations for LISG. How can people get involved and give support? Is there something in the book that can direct them to that?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't mention the volunteers, and I should have done. So let's deal with that one first, which is that, yes, and I've just seen in the chat that there is another group in Sheffield, which is called LASS. Thank you very much for posting that up. Do keep an eye on the chat, because it's often the most informative thing on a Zoom call. Yes, I wanted some of the volunteers' stories in the book as well. And yes, there's Karen McCarthy, who's one of the people in the book, in fact. But I made it very clear to them that they would have to be in the book in exactly the same way as the members, because what we didn't want this book to be was a book about unfortunate women of colour who were being helped out by sainted white women, because that's not how it is at all, actually. LISG is actually about a bunch of women who all come from different backgrounds and who support each other. And so the volunteers, and there are 3 volunteers' stories in the book, are in there in exactly the same way as the members, and they tell their stories as well, how they, everything happened to them up to the point where they got involved in LISG, and it makes for a fine variety. Mm-hmm. But your question about how you can help, we just hope that people will look around them and try and find out what they can do in their own areas. In the back of the book, we've made a list of LGBT and particularly women's asylum support groups, such as we could find out in the country. And I suggest really that you look at that and you get in touch with whichever one seems to you nearest and say, what can I do? Because there are not only those support groups, there are also campaigning groups like one we mentioned earlier, These Walls Must Fall, and quite a lot of others who are campaigning on specific issues around the asylum experience. And at the moment, of course, the whole refugee and asylum community is absolutely terrified, really, about the new proposals from Priti Patel, which will make our lives even worse. And it's very hard to think what would be even worse than living on less than £6 a day and not being allowed to work and being isolated for 15 months in one room. But Priti Patel can think of all kinds of ways of making that worse for us. And there are a lot of campaigns getting going to do something about that. So yeah, I'd start with the list in the book, or start with just typing LGBT asylum into Google and see what's near you.
That's really useful, thanks. And I think, yes, Priti Patel's a very dangerous person, but the Home Office has always been very dangerous. She just seems to be on the case in the most dangerous, horrible manner. I wanted to ask Maria and Charity, if people want to help or be involved in or help fundraise for Kairos and for LISG, are there ways that they can do that? Have you got websites that people can look at?
Yes, I think we have a website. I fundraised for the LISG. It's been last month, I think. It's been last month, Jane, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
When I was sitting in the fundraising, I'm the one who is doing their thing as well.
Okay.
Yeah. There has always been a web page for LISG, but
there is a web page.
Is currently making a new one. It's going to be all singing, all dancing, and you're going to be able to contribute straight from the website. But at the moment, there's a GoFundMe page, I think, isn't there? If you just look on the web, and you will find the way.
Right, somebody's put it up in the chat, actually. That's really useful.
Oh, well, this is Toyin, our wonderful techie person who's actually making our new website. Hi, Toyin. Thank you. And Charity probably knows about Kairos. They have a website?
Yes, it's www.kairos.org.uk.
Great.
I'm sure, if possible, one of my fellow volunteers will put it down for everyone to see. Yeah.
Great. So, Jane, where are you going to go with this work now? Have you got more events planned, or and it's really difficult in a pandemic. It's, as you said, it's really hard.
Extraordinarily difficult. It's lovely to do this event tonight, and we are getting invitations to do online events. It would have been lovely to be able to launch it in Manchester. This is what we'd always wanted to do, maybe at the People's History Museum, where they're so interested in immigration, and in migrant stories. But we will get a party one day. It's only been postponed.
Finger crossed.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we're doing little bits here and there. We've been invited by various people to speak on Zoom, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised how many books we've already sold, thanks to good people like yourself and Gaze the Word and some of the independent bookshops, but also thanks to all kinds of people like the Valley Sisters in Todmorden, who are a bunch of truly wonderful old lesbians who hold fundraisers for the LISG group. Because they couldn't hold their fundraiser this year because there was no getting a bot going in Todmorden Village Hall, they had a Zoom online fundraiser, and I think in the end we raised about £900, didn't we? So yeah, people have been wonderful. People are just wonderful. Very, very helpful.
I'm one of the fundraisers.
Yes. You spoke at one of the fundraisers, I know. That's right. And I'm sure Kairos does the same sort of inventive things. Do you have particular people who help raise funds for you, Charity?
Yeah, we have Di Campbell, who takes care of our fundraising and everything concerning our funds. She's one of our volunteers at Kairos.
Uh-huh. She's just put something in the chat about the Facebook
Our
page.
Facebook page,
Yeah, and your email address. So that's great.
Yeah.
This is a really fantastic audience, all bringing all the skills together and putting all the information
this
together.
Chat is really worth rolling through because it's absolutely chock full of information. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Nothing is impossible for Liz.
Nothing is impossible.
Yeah, nothing is impossible for Liz.
I'm very pleased to see you so positive tonight.
I am positive and only for Liz, not negative and all about in home office.
Right.
So Jane, I just wanted to talk a bit more about I was reading the book, and you and both of you in the different groups in Kairos and in Manchester, it seems to me that there's a great emphasis on having to get the story right for the Home Office, because traumatic as the story is, it has to be right. And then they want some kind of authentication from somebody here to say, oh yeah, this is lesbian, but you're not recognizing it. And that's quite a hard leap to make. But it seems to me this power of the story, but also bringing lesbian experience from here to say, yeah, we recognize people as lesbians, we recognize these women as lesbians or bi women. That's also an important part of it.
Yeah, this is what the volunteers at LISG have become very good at now. They are able to write letters of support for the members, and they don't do that until they have got to know them well. They say, you must come to at least 3 meetings, we must get to know you before we can say anything about you. And also, as Karen says in the book, one of the important things they have to do is to have very, very strict standards, because they can then say, when the Home Office representative in the court says to them, oh, come on, have you ever turned anybody away because you thought they weren't a lesbian? You're just saying. And they can say, yes, we have. We only, when we're sure that we're talking to a woman who is a lesbian, then we take them into the group and we will help them. And they have to have those standards because they have to remain credible. And they are very, very, very careful and very skilled now at writing those letters. And actually, you know what? If you've got any privilege at all, just roll it up and throw it at them. I mean, I'm old, I'm white, I've got lots of letters after my name, though I never mention it usually. But when I write to the Home Office, I stick it all in, University of Sussex, blah, 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 blah. And I tell them all about my research, and I use long words, and I say, this is how it is, because whatever we've got, we have to use on behalf of these sisters who are being so badly treated. But I think one of the things I'm able to say when I write for LISG members, and I have sometimes written for other people, but for LISG members, is that I now know that LISG are a very honest and upright organisation, and that their word can be trusted. And I think that the Home Office are getting used to them. I think they're saying, oh, hello, here comes a letter from that LISG. We better take notice of it. That's the impression that people are beginning to get anyway. But it's hard work, and sometimes it goes right down to the wire.
Can you sort out the rest of the Home Office while you're at it?
Somebody said to me in one of these events the other day, if you were stuck in a lift for 5 minutes with Priti Patel, what would you want to say to her? I'm not often lost for words.
No, you don't know where to start, really. No. And if the audience has any more questions, put them in the Q&A now, and then we'll go forward. And but if there's no more questions, we'll wrap up in a minute. Just hang about and see if there's anything else comes through. But meanwhile, I just want to say I really say thank you to both Charity and Maria for coming on. This is not an easy thing to do. I do understand that, and it's a very courageous thing to do. It really is, and really appreciate you making the time to do that. And I do wish you both well going forward, and especially Charity, I really hope you get status, but this also applies to everybody that these groups are supporting. It's a really, really important work, and I don't think that can be stressed enough. And this is a really, really important book, because these stories are not being told. And this book tells it from the lesbian point of view, from the point of view of lesbians and bi women. This is not somebody else telling the stories. These are our stories, and These are our people, and
Yeah,
we need to
absolutely.
support them.
And perhaps since we've got a minute, I could just draw attention to the last comment that's gone into the chat, because possibly one of the things that people don't know about the experience of a person seeking asylum is that they are forced to go, I think it's every fortnight, to a Home Office place and sign in to prove they're still in the country and to prove, well, I don't know what to prove actually. And in the case of Manchester, it probably takes your entire day's allowance of a few pounds to get the bus fare to go there. But the thing is that they are aware that that's a place from which you could just, without any warning, be detained and deported. And it actually puts a huge mental stress on people to know that they've got to turn up in this hostile place and be checked on a regular basis. And the campaign that I mentioned at the beginning, which is called These Walls Must Fall, is a campaign to abolish that inhuman practice of signing. And Nontokozo has just put in the chat, please follow These Walls Must Fall on Facebook and on Twitter, where we campaign for this to end hostile environment, end detention, and more human treatment for all asylum seekers. So that's another one to follow. These Walls Must Fall.
And somebody else has just put in the chat that she's going to give all the links from the chat to Switchboard, which I think is also important. They need to be there, accessible to people.
That's very true, actually. I haven't thought about that, but we really ought to inform Switchboard, perhaps, especially in the places where support is available. Very good.
Okay, I'm just going to go to Q&A. A question has appeared.
Ooh.
As a comment, so Nontokozo says, what I have heard from the speakers today is heartbreaking, especially Priti Patel, a woman herself, and yet these women go through so much simply to get their status in this country. Everybody would echo that, I think. Yeah, it's too much to ask of people. But thank you everybody for coming tonight, and thank you to the audience. It's been really informative and really lovely event, and I wish everybody well.
And buy the book.
Buy the book. Buy the book. Tamin has put the details in the chat. You can also go onto the 5 Leaves website where there's a web shop. You can buy the book. We'll post it to you wherever you are. And it's we would say, Jane said it, it's not an easy read. It's very readable and it's very accessible, and it's a very good, if you don't know anything about how this process works, read it. If you do know, still read it, buy it, give it to your friends. Thank you very much, everybody.
Copy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.